Keanu Reeves went undercover at his own motorcycle dealership. What he discovered made him call. The FBI, a Hollywood legend, stands before his bathroom mirror at 5 in the morning, barely recognizing the man staring back at him. His famous long dark hair is tucked beneath a worn baseball cap. His warm brown eyes hide behind thick, framed glasses. His designer clothes have been replaced by faded jeans and a beaten leather jacket. Nobody would ever guess that this disheveled figure owns the largest motorcycle dealership chain on the West Coast. Today, Keanu Reeves is going undercover at his own business. But what he discovers in the next 12 hours will shatter everything he believed about the people he trusted most. Two customers. One whispered conversation. A criminal empire hiding in plain sight. And a betrayal that cuts deeper than any he has ever known. The idea had come to him 3 nights ago during yet another sleepless evening. Keanu sat in his home office in the Hollywood Hills, surrounded by memorabilia from a lifetime in film. Posters from The Matrix lined one wall. Photographs from John Wick sets covered another. Awards he never displayed publicly, but kept here in his private sanctuary gathered dust on shelves he rarely noticed. But tonight, his attention was fixed on something far less glamorous. Quarterly reports from Reeves Motorcycles. The dealership had been his passion project for 15 years, born from his genuine love of two-wheeled machines and his desire to build something real, outside of Hollywood. What started as a single showroom in Malibu had grown into a chain of 12 locations across California, Oregon, and Washington. 3,000 employees depended on him. Hundreds of millions in annual revenue flowed through accounts bearing his name, a reputation for integrity that Keanu had personally cultivated over more than a decade. But something was wrong. Customer satisfaction scores had been slipping for 6 months. Nothing dramatic at first glance, just small dips that most owners might overlook or attribute to market fluctuations. But Keanu had not built his business empire by ignoring minor details. He had built it the same way he approached his film career, with obsessive attention to craft and an unwillingness to accept mediocrity. He remembered what his mentor had told him decades ago, back when he was still a struggling actor taking any role that came his way. The devil lives in the details, kid. Miss them, and he'll eat you alive. Those words had guided him through Hollywood's treacherous waters. They had helped him navigate an industry designed to chew up and spit out anyone who let their guard down. And now they whispered to him again, warning him that something in his beloved motorcycle business was very, very wrong. Time to see how the other half lives, he muttered to himself, setting down the reports. The decision felt right, natural even, necessary. Before Hollywood, before the fame, before the magazine covers and red carpets, Keanu had been just another kid who loved motorcycles. He had spent countless hours in garages, learning to repair engines from mechanics who spoke more fluently in torque specifications than English. He had customized bikes until his hands were permanently stained with grease. He had felt the pure mechanical satisfaction of creating something with his own 2 hands. Somewhere along the way, he had become removed from the day-to-day reality of his own business. Board meetings and financial reviews had replaced showroom floors and customer interactions. Conference calls had replaced the smell of leather and motor oil. Spreadsheets had replaced the visceral thrill of watching someone fall in love with their first motorcycle. It was time to remember where he came from. It was time to find out what was really happening in his company. The transformation took 3 days to perfect. Keanu stood before his bathroom mirror on the morning of his undercover mission, barely recognizing the reflection staring back at him. His long, dark brown hair, now streaked with distinguished gray at the temples from years of living, was completely hidden beneath a worn gray baseball cap pulled low over his forehead. A pair of thick, framed black glasses sat on his nose, subtly but effectively changing the shape of his famous face. He had let his normally trimmed beard grow out into something fuller and more unkempt over the past week. The result made him look older, tireder, less like a Hollywood icon and more like a man who had seen better days. But the real transformation was in his posture and clothing. Gone was the quiet confidence of a man who had commanded attention on screens around the world. In its place stood a slightly hunched figure in faded blue jeans with worn knees, a black tee, shirt that had been washed until it was more gray than black, and a leather jacket with fraying seams at the shoulders. He had even changed his shoes. His usual boots were replaced by a pair of sneakers, so worn that one sole was beginning to separate from the upper. He looked exactly like what his cover story claimed. Marcus Webb, 50, 5 years old. Former software developer who had recently cashed in some stock options after a layoff and was looking to fulfill a lifelong dream with a high-end motorcycle. A man having a midlife crisis. Someone desperate to feel alive again. Simple. Believable. Close enough to emotions Keanu actually understood that he could maintain the facade indefinitely. Not bad. He told his reflection. Not bad at all. His phone buzzed on the bathroom counter. A text from his assistant asking about his schedule for the day. Taking a personal day, he typed back. Cancel everything. The lie came easier than it should have. The morning air was crisp as Keanu pulled his rented Honda Civic into the parking lot of Reeves Motorcycles' flagship Los Angeles location, not into his usual reserved spot behind the building where his name was painted in elegant script on the asphalt, not into the executive garage where security cameras tracked every movement, but into the customer area near the front entrance, sandwiched between a pickup truck and a minivan like any ordinary person. His heart raced with unexpected nervousness. This was his dealership. His name was on the building, for God's sake, displayed in 3-foot-tall letters that cost more than most people's cars. He had signed the papers that purchased this land. He had approved every design decision, from the color of the walls to the placement of the coffee machines. He had walked these floors thousands of times, but from this angle, everything felt different. Foreign. He was no longer Keanu Reeves, owner and founder and celebrity whose face launched 1,000 entertainment news stories. He was Marcus Webb, ordinary customer, and ordinary customers experienced the world very differently. The familiar glass doors slid open with a soft whisper of air, and Keanu stepped into a world he had created but never truly experienced from this perspective. The showroom gleamed under strategic lighting that he had personally approved after reviewing 14 different proposals from lighting designers. Rows of pristine motorcycles caught the morning sun streaming through floor to ceiling windows that had cost a small fortune to install and maintain. The subtle scent of leather and polish filled the air, a detail he had specifically requested when designing the store's atmosphere years ago. Everything looked perfect. Everything smelled perfect. But something beneath the surface felt wrong. A few early customers were already wandering between the displays, their expressions mixing desire with financial calculation. Some touched the motorcycles reverently, like pilgrims approaching holy relics. Others maintained careful distance, as if afraid that touching something so beautiful might obligate them to buy it. Welcome to Reeves Motorcycles. The greeting came from a young woman with auburn hair pulled back in a professional ponytail. Her smile was bright, her posture confident, her uniform crisp and clean. Her name tag read, Samantha, and according to the employee files Keanu had reviewed the night before, she had been with the company for only 4 months. Can I help you find anything specific today? Samantha asked, her eyes performing the subtle assessment that all salespeople learned. Checking his clothes, his posture, his apparent wealth or lack thereof. Keanu deliberately hesitated, playing his part. Just looking for now. Been saving up for this for a while, you know. He forced his voice into a slightly different register than his natural tone, rougher around the edges, carrying hints of defeat. Of course! Feel free to look around and take your time." Samantha's smile remained bright, though Keanu noticed a slight cooling in her eyes. His appearance had been cataloged and judged. "We just got some new Ducati Panigale V4s in last week. Absolute beauties if you're interested in sport bikes." "I'll check them out. Thanks." Keanu moved deeper into the showroom, his trained actor's instincts cataloging every detail. The floor was spotless, exactly as it should be. The motorcycles were arranged in precise rows, organized by manufacturer and price point. Background music played at exactly the right volume to create atmosphere without interfering with conversation. All the surface details were perfect. But he began to notice smaller things. Two employees near the service desk were having a whispered conversation that stopped abruptly when they noticed him looking in their direction. A manager in the back office was on the phone, his expression tense, his voice rising and falling in what sounded like an argument. Three salespeople were clustered near the coffee station, checking their phones instead of engaging with the few customers present. These were not the behaviors of a well-run operation. These were the behaviors of people hiding something. For the next hour, Keanu immersed himself in the customer experience with the dedication of a method actor preparing for a career-defining role. He asked detailed questions about different models, noting how each salesperson responded. He inquired about financing options, warranty coverage, service packages, and trade in values. He tested their product knowledge with questions about engine specifications and performance characteristics. Some employees, like Samantha, showed genuine enthusiasm and impressive knowledge. They talked about motorcycles like fellow enthusiasts rather than salespeople hitting quotas. They listened to his questions and answered thoughtfully. They treated him with respect despite his worn appearance. Others were different. One salesperson, a sharply dressed man in his 30s whose name tag read Vincent, seemed more interested in pushing toward a quick sale than understanding what the customer actually wanted. His eyes kept flicking to the expensive watch on Keanu's wrist, the only luxury item he had forgotten to remove from his disguise. "This Kawasaki Ninja is perfect for someone at your level," Vincent said with barely concealed condescension, gesturing toward one of their entry-level models. "Easy to handle, not too powerful. Great starter bike for someone getting back into riding after a long break." Keanu suppressed a smile that wanted to become a laugh. He had been riding motorcycles for 40 years. He owned a collection that included some of the rarest machines ever built. He could probably teach Vincent things about motorcycle handling that the younger man would never learn in a lifetime. "I was thinking something with a bit more capability." Keanu replied mildly, maintaining his cover. "Maybe something that could handle highway speeds without feeling like it's about to shake apart." Vincent's expression flickered with surprise, then skepticism, then something that looked almost like contempt. He clearly did not believe this disheveled older man in worn clothes could handle anything beyond a beginner's bike. "Well, we can look at some options, but I'd hate for you to get in over your head. Safety first, you know." Keanu made a mental note. This attitude was exactly the kind of thing that damaged customer satisfaction scores. This assumption that appearance determined capability. This casual dismissal of someone based on how they looked rather than who they were. He had experienced this treatment before in his life. Before he was famous, when he was just another struggling actor waiting tables between auditions. People had looked through him like he did not exist. People had assumed his dreams were delusions. Now he was experiencing it again, and the memory of those early humiliations burned fresh. The real test came when Keanu approached a limited edition BMW S1000 RR, one of their most expensive models. The bike gleamed under the showroom, lights like a precision instrument carved from pure speed. Its aggressive lines promised the kind of performance that made his pulse quicken even after decades of riding. The price tag, discreetly displayed on a small placard, read $78,000. Mind if I sit on it? Keanu asked, deliberately pulling out a slightly worn wallet from his jacket pocket. The sales manager materialized beside him almost instantly, appearing from somewhere in the back offices like he had been summoned by the scent of potential commission. Derek Thompson was a tall man in his mid-40s with the polished appearance of someone who had climbed the corporate ladder through charm rather than expertise. Perfect hair, slightly too much product. Designer suit that fit well but was trying too hard. Smile that showed too many teeth. According to company records that Keanu had reviewed, Derek had been with Reeves Motorcycles for 7 years, working his way up from floor salesman to his current position as general manager of the flagship location. His sales numbers were excellent. His customer reviews were positive. His personnel file contained nothing but commendations. On paper, he was the perfect employee, but something in his eyes made Keanu's instincts prickle with warning. Of course, sir. Let me just grab the keys to release the security chain. Derek's smile widened, but Keanu noticed how his eyes flickered to the worn jacket, performed a quick calculation, and returned with a different quality. Less warmth, more assessment. Take your time getting comfortable. That's a serious machine you're looking at. Keanu straddled the motorcycle, feeling the familiar ergonomics of a bike he had actually helped design special modifications for through a shell company that kept his involvement anonymous. The seat height was perfect for his frame. The handlebars fell naturally to his grip. The weight distribution promised handling that would make mountain roads feel like racetracks. Derek launched into his sales pitch, speaking in the practiced cadence of someone who had delivered these words hundreds of times. Beautiful choice. The S1000R is really something special. German engineering at its finest. This particular unit has the premium package, which includes the electronic suspension, the cruise control, and the heated grips for those cold morning rides. What are we looking at price-wise? This particular model, with all the features, runs about $78,000. Derek paused, watching Keanu's face for reaction. Of course. That includes our premium service package for the first 2 years. Keanu nodded slowly, pretending to consider the number with the concerned expression of someone for whom $78,000 represented a significant sacrifice. That's significant. Derek leaned in, lowering his voice conspiratorially as if sharing a secret. Look, I shouldn't really do this, but I might be able to work something out with the price. The owner is a real numbers guy, keeps everything super tight. But I've got some flexibility for the right customer. What's your budget looking like? The phrase, real numbers guy, referring to himself almost made Keanu laugh out loud. If only Derek knew that the numbers guy was sitting right in front of him, wearing a disguise that cost less than one of Derek's ties. I've got some flexibility myself, Keanu replied carefully, depending on how the deal shakes out. The negotiation continued for another 20 minutes, and Keanu was genuinely impressed by Derek's sales skills despite his growing suspicions about the man's character. The manager knew how to read customers, how to create urgency without being pushy, how to make someone feel special while still protecting profit margins. He used silence effectively. He asked probing questions that revealed more than the customer intended to share. But some of his tactics skirted the edges of company policy. Small exaggerations about feature availability. Suggestions that prices might increase soon due to supply issues that Keanu knew did not exist. Implications that financing terms were more flexible than they actually were. Individually, each tactic was minor. Together, they suggested a pattern of corner-cutting that bore serious investigation. Keanu was about to push the negotiation further, curious how Derek would handle a truly difficult customer, when a snippet of conversation from behind him made his blood run cold. 2 customers had moved closer to the vintage motorcycle display near the back of the showroom. Their voices dropped to barely above a whisper. The kind of quiet that people use when they think no one is listening. Under normal circumstances, their words would have been lost in the showroom's ambient music and casual conversation. But Keanu had spent decades training his senses for film work, learning to hear dialogue whispered by scene partners, learning to pick up subtle cues that most people missed, learning to be aware of his surroundings in ways that had saved his life more than once during complicated stunt sequences. They say you can get any bike you want for half the price if you know the right guy. Yeah, but it's got to be off the books. No paperwork, no tracking. Keanu's hands tightened on the BMW's handlebars, his knuckles going white beneath his deliberately dirty fingernails. 15 years. 15 years of building this business with his own sweat and vision. 15 years of ensuring every sale was legitimate and every customer was treated fairly. 15 years of creating a reputation that meant something in an industry often plagued by shady dealers and questionable practices. And someone was running a shadow operation right under his nose. He forced himself to remain casual, pretending to adjust the mirrors while straining to hear more of the conversation. Derek was still talking about financing options, his voice becoming distant background noise. Keanu's entire focus had shifted to the two men behind him. I heard they move like 10, 15 bikes a month through this place. High-end stuff only. Ducatis, BMWs, the premium Japanese models. Nothing cheap. And nobody notices. That's the beautiful part. The system is set up so everything looks clean. Damaged inventory gets written off, sent for repair, and then it just disappears. Shows up somewhere else with new papers. Keanu's mind was racing through possibilities, calculating implications, remembering small discrepancies in inventory reports that he had attributed to computer errors or clerical mistakes. Over the past year, the number of motorcycles marked as damaged during transport had increased by almost 40%. He had asked about it once in a quarterly meeting, and the response had been something about new shipping contractors still learning the handling protocols. He had accepted that explanation. He had trusted his managers. Who's running it? Guy named Ray. Been here for years. Got the whole thing wired. The name hit Keanu like a physical blow to the chest. Ray, Raymond Mitchell, is warehouse manager of 4 years. The same Ray who had suggested implementing the new inventory tracking system 18 months ago. The same Ray who always volunteered for late, night inventory counts. The same Ray whom Keanu had personally promoted after he caught what appeared to be a bookkeeping error that saved the company $50,000. The same Ray whom Keanu had recommended for an Industry Excellence Award last year. I'll need to think about it. Keanu heard himself say, his voice remarkably steady despite the turmoil churning in his gut. Mind if I walk around a bit more? Really want to be sure about such a big investment. Of course, sir. Take your time. Derek handed him a business card with a practiced motion. I'm here all day if you have any questions. Ask for Derek personally, and I'll make sure you get taken care of. Keanu nodded, slowly dismounting the BMW. His legs felt unsteady as he moved away from Derek, careful not to look directly at the two customers whose conversation had just shattered his world. But his peripheral vision caught everything. One of them wore a leather vest over a white T-shirt, his muscular arms covered in faded tattoos of flames and skulls and imagery that suggested membership in circles Keanu preferred not to imagine. The other was younger, maybe late 20s, dressed too expensively for someone supposedly looking for illegal deals. Designer jeans that cost $500, limited edition sneakers that resold for twice their retail price, and a watch that Keanu recognized as a Patek Philippe, worth more than some of their motorcycles. These were not ordinary criminals. These were professionals. Man, these prices are insane. Designer Watch said loudly, playing to any observers who might be listening. Then his voice dropped again, barely audible. Good thing we know better, right? Keanu pretended to examine a vintage Triumph Bonneville from their classic collection, angling himself to catch the two men's reflections in the polished chrome while appearing absorbed in the bike's restored details. Tattoo Vest pulled out his phone, scrolling through what looked like a contact list. Got the connection right here. Ray's been hooking people up for months. Quality merchandise, clean paperwork, never had a complaint. The guy's a professional? How does it actually work? Simple. Tattoo Vest's voice carried a hint of admiration for the scheme's elegance. You pick what you want from the showroom. Ray marks it as damaged in the computer system. Bike gets loaded onto a transport truck like it's heading to the repair facility. But somewhere along the way, it takes a detour. He made air quotes with his fingers. Shows up wherever you need it with new serial numbers and fresh paperwork. Half price. Cash only. No way to trace it back to here. Keanu's fingers clenched around the Bonneville's handlebar so hard the vintage chrome creaked in protest. The missing inventory reports. The increased number of damaged units. The discrepancies in transport logs that Ray had always explained away with technical glitches or contractor incompetence. It all clicked into place with sickening clarity. Sounds almost too good to be true. Designer Watch mused, flipping through a glossy catalog with exaggerated disinterest. What's stopping the owner from figuring it out? That Reeves guy is supposed to be pretty hands. On with his businesses. A sharp, dismissive laugh from Tattoo Vest made Keanu's jaw tighten. Keanu Reeves. Please. The contempt in his voice was palpable. The guy's too busy making movies and counting his millions to notice what's happening in his own backyard. Celebrities like that hire people to run things and then forget about them. Besides, Ray's got the computer system completely locked down. Swaps serial numbers with junked bikes that were headed for recycling. Makes everything look perfectly legit on paper. The casual dismissal stung more than Keanu expected. Was that really how people saw him? Some distant celebrity figure too, removed from reality to notice theft happening under his own roof. Too rich and famous to care about the details of his own business. The anger that rose in his chest was different from anything he had felt on a film set. This was not the simulated rage of a character. This was real. This was personal. This was about everything he had built, everything he believed in, being violated by people who thought he was too stupid or too detached to notice. When can we set something up? Tonight. Behind the service lot at 11. Bring cash. 40 grand for that Ducati you were eyeing earlier. Tattoo Vest grinned. No paperwork, no questions, no bullshit. Keanu's mind flashed to the new Ducati Panigale V4 that had arrived last week with great fanfare. He had actually been excited about getting it in stock. Listed retail $70,000, $9,000. These criminals were selling it for half that. The mathematics of loss crashed through his thoughts like a derailing train. Not just the stolen bikes, but the insurance implications if they were caught. The potential legal consequences if his dealership was found to be a front for criminal activity. The damage to his reputation if this ever became public. The employees who could lose their jobs if the business suffered. The customers who had trusted his name. Hey, you need any help there? The cheerful voice nearly made Keanu jump out of his skin. Samantha, the young saleswoman from earlier, had approached while he was focused on the criminal's conversation, just admiring the classic lines. Keanu managed, forcing his voice into something resembling calm. These older models really tell a story, don't they? They sure do! Samantha launched into an impressive history of the Bonneville's evolution through the decades, her genuine enthusiasm providing Keanu with a legitimate reason to linger in the area while the two criminals finished their conversation. He listened with half an ear, nodding at appropriate moments, while his mind raced through implications and possibilities. Tattoo Vest and Designer Watch were moving toward the exit now, their business apparently concluded. But not before Tattoo Vest made a show of taking Derek's business card from the holder near the door. We'll definitely be back to test ride some bikes, he called out loudly, performing for anyone who might be watching. Got to shop around, you know? Big decision like this. Take your time, gentlemen. Derek replied with his practiced smile. We're here whenever you're ready. Keanu watched them leave through the gleaming glass doors, their reflections dissolving into the morning sunlight like ghosts fading at dawn. The showroom suddenly felt different. Every polished surface seemed to hide shadows. Every friendly employee smile carried potential deception. The pride he had felt in his dealership just hours ago had transformed into something darker and more complicated. His sanctuary had been corrupted, turned into a front for criminals who saw his life's work as nothing more than an opportunity for easy money. And he was going to find out exactly how deep this betrayal went. The local coffee shop 2 blocks from the dealership became Keanu's temporary command center for the investigation. He settled into a corner booth with his back to the wall, an old habit from playing too many action heroes who needed to see threats coming before they arrived. His laptop was open, connected to the dealership's internal systems through a secure VPN that, ironically, Ray himself had recommended installing 18 months ago. The irony was not lost on him. The very security system that was supposed to protect his business was being used by criminals to rob him blind. And he had signed off on every upgrade, every access permission, every modification. "Can I get you anything else?" the barista asked, eyeing his untouched Americano with the concerned expression of someone who worked for tips. "I'm good, thanks," Keanu muttered, barely looking up from his screen. The past 18 months of inventory records sprawled before him in columns and rows, each entry a potential clue to the scope of Ray's operation. At first glance, everything looked normal. Proper documentation, correct serial numbers, standard repair codes that matched industry protocols. But Keanu had not built a business empire by accepting things at face value. He started cross-referencing the serial numbers of damaged bikes with their original shipping manifests. The work was tedious, the kind of forensic accounting that most CEOs delegated to specialists and accountants. But Keanu needed to see it himself, needed to understand exactly what had been happening in his business while he was distracted by film schedules and charity events and all the demands that fame placed on a person's time. A pattern emerged within the first hour of searching. Subtle, almost invisible unless you knew exactly what to look for, but unmistakable once the shape became clear. Every Tuesday and Thursday night, like clockwork, a high-end motorcycle would be marked as damaged and scheduled for transport to the repair facility. The paperwork was flawless. Too flawless, actually. The same standardized forms every time, the same diagnostic codes, the same estimated repair costs down to the penny, even the same grammatical patterns in the damage descriptions. Real damage reports varied wildly. Mechanics had their own shorthand, their own ways of describing problems, their own quirks of language. One mechanic might write, "Front fork misaligned, needs realignment," while another would write, "Forks bent, replace." The inconsistencies were human, natural. These reports were copies, probably generated from a template that Ray had refined over months of practice until it was virtually undetectable. "Sleever, Ray," Keanu whispered, taking his first sip of the now cold coffee. Very clever, but not clever enough. He opened a new window on his screen. The employee scheduling system. Over the past 14 months, Ray had gradually adjusted the warehouse staffing to ensure he was alone during specific shifts. The changes had been implemented slowly, spread across different departments, attributed to various operational needs that all sounded perfectly reasonable in isolation. Budget optimization, efficiency improvements, response to employee requests for schedule changes. No single change was suspicious on its own. Together, they painted a picture of systematic preparation for theft on an industrial scale. Keanu's phone buzzed with an incoming text. Michael Davidson, his head of security for the past 8 years. "Boss, you weren't at this morning's executive briefing." Everything okay? Should I be concerned? For a long moment, Keanu considered confiding in Michael. The man had been with the company almost from the beginning. He had helped design the security protocols. He had hired most of the security staff. He had been trusted with the most sensitive aspects of the business. His loyalty had always seemed unquestionable. But the same could have been said about Ray until this morning. Under the weather, Keanu texted back after a careful pause. Taking a personal day. Nothing to worry about. The lie left a bitter taste that the cold coffee could not wash away. But he could not risk tipping anyone off. Not until he understood the full scope of what he was dealing with. Not until he knew exactly who could be trusted. He pulled up Ray's personnel file next. The man's background check had been clean when he was hired 4 years ago. Almost too clean, in retrospect. Previous employment at 3 other motorcycle dealerships, each position lasting exactly 2 to 3 years. Excellent references from supervisors who praised his work ethic and attention to detail. No criminal record. No red flags of any kind. A model employee on paper. But something nagged at Keanu's instincts. The same instincts that had helped him navigate Hollywood's treacherous waters for decades. The same instincts that had told him which projects would succeed and which would fail. The same instincts that were now screaming that Ray Mitchell was far more dangerous than a simple employee who had gone bad. He opened a browser and started searching. The first dealership Ray had worked at, Pacific Coast Motors in San Diego, had filed for bankruptcy 11 months after Ray's departure. The official cause was listed as financial mismanagement, but court documents available online mentioned unexplained inventory discrepancies totaling over $2 million. The second dealership, Sunset Cycles in Phoenix, had suffered a mysterious warehouse fire that destroyed not only their inventory, but all their paper records. Insurance investigators had found evidence suggesting fraud, but could never prove anything conclusively. Ray had resigned 2 weeks before the fire, citing family reasons. The third dealership, Mountain View Motorcycles in Denver, had closed following an FBI investigation into suspected money laundering. No arrests were ever made, but the business never recovered from the scrutiny and the legal costs of defending itself. 3 dealerships. 3 disasters. One common element, Raymond Mitchell. You've done this before. Keanu realized, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he dug deeper into records that should have been reviewed before Ray was ever hired. This is your whole career. This is what you do. Ray Mitchell was not just a dishonest employee who had been tempted by opportunity. He was a professional con artist, a specialist who targeted motorcycle dealerships, set up sophisticated theft operations, and disappeared before anyone connected the dots. Each time, he left destruction in his wake: bankruptcies, fires, federal investigations, business owners who lost everything they had built. And now he had targeted Keanu's dealership. The question was how many others were involved. Movement outside the coffee shop window caught his attention. A familiar figure was walking past, heading away from the dealership in the direction of the parking structure. Samantha, the young saleswoman who had helped him earlier, checking her phone as she walked. But something about her body language sent warning signals racing through Keanu's nervous system. The way she kept glancing over her shoulder every few seconds. The nervous energy in her movements that had not been there in the showroom. The fact that she was leaving in the middle of her shift, when the employee schedule clearly showed her working until 6. Keanu pulled up the payroll records with trembling fingers. Samantha Chen had been hired 4 months ago, right after Ray had submitted a request for an additional sales position on the showroom floor. Her resume was impeccable. Outstanding references from previous employers. Previous experience at 3 other motorcycle dealerships. The same 3 dealerships where Ray had worked, just offset by a few months each time. No. Keanu breathed, his chest tightening with the weight of expanding betrayal. Please. No. But the evidence was right there on his screen, undeniable. Samantha was not just another sales associate who happened to be good at her job. She was part of Ray's operation, part of a team that had been running this con for years, moving from target to target, leaving destruction wherever they went. She probably handled the customer-facing side of things, identifying potential buyers for stolen merchandise, building relationships with people who might be interested in deals that were too good to be legal, feeding information to Ray about which bikes were generating interest and which customers might be convinced to go off books. How many others were involved? The question consumed Keanu as the afternoon wore on. Every employee file he reviewed seemed to contain potential red flags. Every scheduling decision seemed to serve some hidden purpose. Every friendly interaction he remembered now carried the taint of possible deception. His phone buzzed again. An unknown number this time. Meeting confirmed for tonight, 11 p.m. Service lot. Bring the cash. They had gotten his number from the customer information card he filled out earlier that morning, the one that asked for contact details for follow-up about the BMW he had shown interest in. They were so confident in their scheme that they were not even being careful anymore. So sure that no one was watching. So certain that the celebrity owner was too disconnected to notice what was happening in his own business. Tonight's meeting was not just about one stolen motorcycle. It was Keanu's chance to expose the entire operation. But first, he needed to understand exactly what he was walking into. And he needed help from people he could actually trust. The sun had long since set when Keanu parked his rental car 3 blocks from the dealership. The familiar neon sign cast its blue glow against the night sky like a beacon. Reeves Motorcycles, in flowing script designed to evoke both elegance and speed. He had been so proud when that sign first illuminated 15 years ago. He had stood in this very parking lot with tears in his eyes, watching his dream become reality. Now the sign looked different. Now it looked like a beacon for criminals. He checked his equipment one final time. Phone fully charged with the camera ready to document everything. A small voice recorder running in his jacket pocket. The direct number for FBI Special Agent Harrison, whom he had briefed via an encrypted call 3 hours ago. This operation may be connected to organized crime. Harrison had warned him during their conversation. The pattern you've described matches cases we've been tracking across multiple states for the past 2 years. If you're right about tonight, we'll have units standing by to move on your signal. Keanu had agreed to wear a wire, a small transmitter hidden beneath his shirt that would allow federal agents to monitor the situation in real time. The device was uncomfortable against his skin, a constant reminder of the stakes involved. It felt strange, using skills he had only ever employed on film sets. But this was not a movie. There would be no director calling cut if something went wrong. There would be no stunt coordinator ensuring everyone's safety. There would be no second takes if he made a mistake. This was real, and real had consequences. 10:15 p.m. The service lot behind the dealership was dark, except for security lights casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. From his vantage point behind a delivery truck parked on the adjacent street, Keanu could see the employee parking area clearly. 3 vehicles remained this late at night. Ray's black pickup truck, parked in the spot closest to the warehouse entrance, a silver sedan that Keanu did not recognize, and a white panel van with no markings that had not been there during business hours. The warehouse's side door opened, spilling yellow light onto the asphalt. Ray emerged first, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing animatedly as he spoke to someone. Even from this distance, Keanu could read the tension in his body language. The rigid shoulders, the quick, nervous movements, the way he kept scanning the darkness as if expecting threats to materialize from the shadows. This was not the confident swagger of a man running a successful criminal operation. This was the nervous energy of someone who sensed that something was wrong. Something had spooked him. Keanu raised his phone camera, zooming in to capture Ray's face and movements. The man he had trusted. The man he had promoted. The man he had defended in management meetings when others questioned certain decisions. The man who had been stealing from him all along. A second figure stepped out of the shadows near the loading dock. Derek, the sales manager. Keanu's stomach dropped another few inches. Derek was supposed to be one of the good ones. His numbers were excellent. His customer reviews were positive. He had won Employee of the Quarter 3 times in the past 2 years. But here he was, at 11 at night, meeting with Ray in a dark parking lot, when both of them should have been home with their families. The two men engaged in what appeared to be a heated argument, their voices too low to carry to Keanu's position. Ray kept pointing at his phone, then at the warehouse. Derek was shaking his head vigorously, his body language defensive and frightened. Something had changed. Something had made them nervous. 10:40, 5 p.m., a white panel van pulled into the lot from the back entrance, headlights off. It circled around to the loading dock, backing up to the large roll-up door with the practiced precision of drivers who had done this many times before. The driver stayed inside, engine idling. The loading dock door rolled up with a mechanical groan, and two more figures emerged from the warehouse interior. They were pushing a motorcycle covered in moving blankets, handling it with the careful efficiency of people who knew exactly how much the merchandise was worth. Even under the covers, Keanu recognized the distinctive profile, a Ducati Panigale V4, $79,000 in stolen merchandise, being loaded like furniture for an illegal sale. His fingers tightened on his phone as he documented everything. Faces, license plates, timestamps. The methodical efficiency of people who had done this dozens of times before without getting caught. But something still felt wrong. Ray's nervous energy had not decreased. If anything, it had intensified. He kept checking his phone every few seconds, as if waiting for news that had not arrived. Derek had retreated to the shadows near his car, standing apart from the operation as if trying to maintain deniability. These were not the behaviors of confident criminals executing a routine theft. These were the behaviors of people who sensed the walls closing in. 11 p.m. exactly. A black SUV with tinted windows pulled into the lot from the main entrance, moving slowly, its occupants scanning the surroundings before committing to the location. The vehicle stopped near the loading dock, and four men emerged. Keanu recognized two of them immediately. Designer watch and tattoo vest from the showroom earlier that day. But the other two were different. Older. Harder. Moving with the military precision of professionals who had seen violence and knew how to deliver it. These were not ordinary criminals looking for a good deal on a stolen motorcycle. These were soldiers in something much larger. The group converged near the loading dock, voices still too low for Keanu's position. Money changed hands. Thick envelopes that probably contained tens of thousands in cash. Ray was nodding rapidly, his earlier confidence completely absent, replaced by something that looked almost like fear. A second van appeared from the darkness. Then a third. The loading dock became a flurry of organized activity as more motorcycles were rolled out from the warehouse. One after another, premium machines that Keanu had personally selected for his inventory. A Kawasaki Ninja ZX-1R, a BMW Sethausen RR like the one he had sat on earlier, a vintage Harley Davidson from their classic collection that had taken months to restore. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in stolen merchandise, being loaded into unmarked vans, in his parking lot, by people he had trusted. Keanu's finger hovered over Agent Harrison's speed dial. One call would bring FBI units screaming into the lot with lights and sirens. Would end this operation tonight and put these criminals behind bars. But something held him back. Years of instinct, honed by decades of studying human behavior for his craft, told him that something bigger was happening here. Something that went beyond simple theft. Something that the nervous energy and unusual urgency suggested, but did not fully explain. He needed to understand what had changed. He needed to know why they were running. 11:15 p.m. A familiar vehicle pulled into the lot. Michael Davidson's black SUV. Keanu's heart nearly stopped beating as his head of security stepped out and walked directly toward Ray, greeting him with a handshake that spoke of long association and shared secrets. The final piece clicked into place with devastating clarity. Michael had not been failing to notice the security breaches. He had been facilitating them. 8 years. 8 years of trusting this man with every aspect of his company's protection. 8 years of security upgrades and protocol reviews and incident reports that had all been designed not to catch thieves, but to help them avoid detection. Every camera angle that happened to miss critical areas. Every alarm system that happened to malfunction on key nights. Every security guard who happened to be assigned elsewhere when shipments went missing. All of it orchestrated by the man Keanu had trusted to keep his business safe. The scope of the betrayal was almost too vast to comprehend. Ray handling the inventory manipulation and logistics. Derek managing customer relationships and sales paperwork. Samantha identifying potential buyers and building relationships. Michael ensuring the security systems never captured anything incriminating. It was a perfect conspiracy, a machine designed to extract maximum value while leaving minimum evidence. Each person with exactly the access they needed to make the operation work seamlessly. But why tonight? Why the sudden rush to move everything at once? Why the fear in Ray's body language and the urgency in everyone's movements? The answer arrived in a black town car with tinted windows. The vehicle pulled up to the edge of the lot, its presence immediately changing the dynamic. Ray, Derek, and Michael all straightened, their body language shifting from nervous to something approaching terror. The man who emerged from the back seat was in his 60s. Silver hair styled with the precision of someone who paid hundreds of dollars for haircuts. He wore a suit that probably cost more than most of the motorcycles being stolen, and he moved with the confident authority of someone who expected absolute obedience from everyone around him. Gentlemen, his voice carried across the lot with cultured coldness. We have a significant problem. Keanu did not recognize him, but his phone's facial recognition software might provide answers later. He snapped several photographs, sending them immediately to Agent Harrison through the secure channel they had established. The inventory system upgrade. The silver-haired man continued, his tone suggesting that subordinates had failed him and would face consequences. It's being implemented next week instead of next month. Someone accelerated the timeline. Our window is closing faster than anticipated. The new digital tracking system. Keanu had approved it 3 months ago as part of a company-wide modernization effort. Blockchain-based verification that could not be falsified. GPS tracking embedded in high-value units. Real-time inventory reconciliation that would flag any discrepancies immediately. He had pushed to implement it faster after reviewing the suspiciously high number of damaged units. At the time, he had thought he was simply improving efficiency. Now he realized he had unknowingly set a deadline that forced the criminal's hand. They were not just stealing motorcycles tonight. They were emptying the warehouse, taking everything they could before the new system made their operation impossible to continue. How many units can we move tonight? The silver-haired man demanded. Ray consulted his phone with trembling fingers. We've got 18 high-value machines ready for transport. Maybe 20 if we rush the paperwork on the last 2. Then rush it. I want this location clean by dawn. The silver-haired man's gaze swept across his subordinates with obvious contempt. And I want contingencies in place. If anything goes wrong tonight, everyone here knows the protocols. Keanu's phone vibrated silently with a text from Agent Harrison. Subject identified, Victor Marchetti. Connected to organized vehicle trafficking operations across 6 states. Major player in the Golden Road Syndicate. We're coordinating with multiple field offices. Ready to move on your signal. Victor Marchetti. The name rang bells from news coverage Keanu half remembered. A legitimate businessman on paper, with car dealerships and real estate holdings across the western states. But persistent rumors connected him to criminal enterprises that law enforcement had never been able to prove. Until now. Until tonight, Keanu had a choice to make. He could signal the FBI immediately and end this operation with maximum drama. Arrests, seizures, his name in the headlines as the celebrity who helped bust a major crime ring. Or he could wait, gather more evidence, ensure that when the hammer fell, it crushed the entire organization rather than just the foot soldiers. His finger hesitated over the send button. In that moment of hesitation, everything changed. Ray's phone buzzed with an incoming call. His face went pale as he answered, listened for a few seconds, and then looked directly at the delivery truck where Keanu was hiding. "Boss," Ray said quietly, his voice carrying clearly in the night air. "We've got a problem. Security picked up someone on the perimeter cameras 20 minutes ago. They've been watching us." Victor Marchetti's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes became very, very cold. "Find them. Now." Three of the military-looking men broke away from the group, moving with professional efficiency toward Keanu's position. His cover was blown. He hit send on the signal to Agent Harrison, then started running. The next 3 minutes were the longest of Keanu's life. He sprinted through back alleys and side streets, using the knowledge of this neighborhood that he had gained from 15 years of owning the dealership, left at the dumpsters behind the Thai restaurant, right through the gap in the fence that the local kids used as a shortcut, across the empty lot where a furniture store had closed down during the pandemic. Behind him, he could hear pursuit, footsteps, voices, the sound of car engines starting. But he could also hear sirens in the distance, growing louder by the second. He burst out onto the main street just as the first FBI vehicles came screaming around the corner, lights blazing, blocking all escape routes from the dealership. "Freeze! FBI!" Everyone on the ground. The commands echoed through the night as agents swarmed the service lot. The criminals who had been pursuing Keanu stopped dead in their tracks, caught between the approaching FBI vehicles and the agents pouring out of unmarked cars that had been positioned around the perimeter. Keanu leaned against a lamppost, gasping for breath, and watched justice unfold. The arrests took over an hour. Keanu watched from the sidelines as FBI agents systematically dismantled the operation he had helped expose. Ray Mitchell was led away in handcuffs, his earlier arrogance completely dissolved into shock. Derek Thompson was crying, already trying to bargain with any agent who would listen. Michael Davidson maintained a stoic silence that spoke of someone who knew exactly how much trouble he was in. Samantha was arrested at her apartment 20 minutes later, along with 2 other employees whose involvement Keanu had not even suspected. The biggest prize was Victor Marchetti himself. The crime boss attempted to flee in his town car, but was blocked by FBI vehicles before he could leave the parking lot. When agents pulled him from the vehicle, his expensive suit was rumpled and his silver hair was disheveled. For the first time, he looked like what he really was. A criminal who had finally run out of luck, Mr. Reeves. Agent Harrison approached him, her expression professional but with a hint of warmth underneath. "We've been tracking the Golden Road Syndicate for 3 years. Your evidence tonight helped us close cases across 6 states and connect to an estimated $45 million in stolen vehicles." She paused. "You could have been killed, you know. Going undercover without backup. Confronting these people alone." Ainu looked at the dealership sign, still glowing blue against the night sky. "Sometimes the only way to protect what you've built is to risk everything for it. That's either very brave or very foolish. Probably both." He managed a tired smile. "But I couldn't let them destroy what I spent 15 years creating. Not without fighting back." The FBI spent the next 3 days processing evidence at the dealership. Keanu was there for most of it. answering questions, providing access, watching as the full scope of the betrayal became clear. Over 18 months, Ray's operation had stolen more than 200 motorcycles, with a combined value exceeding $8 million. The theft ring had connections to criminal organizations in 6 states. The money had been laundered through a network of shell companies that federal prosecutors were still working to unravel. Michael Davidson had been the inside man from the beginning, recruited by Marchetti's organization before Keanu even hired him. His entire 8-year tenure as head of security had been a cover for systematic theft. Derek Thompson had been compromised through gambling debts, coerced into cooperation with threats against his family. His cooperation with prosecutors would likely result in a reduced sentence. Samantha Chen turned out to be Ray's girlfriend, traveling with him from target to target, helping set up operations and then vanishing before anyone connected the dots. The news coverage was intense. Keanu Reeves goes undercover, busts major crime ring, read the headlines. Entertainment news and business news collided as reporters tried to make sense of a Hollywood icon personally dismantling a criminal conspiracy. Some coverage was positive, praising his hands-on approach and dedication to his business. Some was critical, questioning why he had not noticed the theft earlier or why he had risked his life instead of immediately calling authorities. Keanu ignored most of it. He had learned long ago that public opinion was fickle, and the only judgment that mattered was whether he could look at himself in the mirror. 3 months later, Reeves' motorcycles reopened with a completely transformed operation. The morning sun streamed through newly installed smart glass windows as Keanu walked through his flagship showroom. The motorcycles gleamed under updated lighting. The security systems hummed quietly in the background, invisible but effective. The staff moved with the confident energy of people who believed in what they were doing. Everything looked the same. Everything was completely different. "The quarterly results are in," said a familiar voice behind him. Keanu turned to find Sarah Harrison, no longer wearing an FBI badge but dressed in the professional attire of the private sector. After the case concluded, she had surprised everyone by accepting his offer to become the new head of security at Reeves Motorcycles. "I think you'll be pleased," she continued, handing him a tablet. The numbers were impressive. Customer satisfaction at an all-time high. Employee retention improved by 40%. Revenue actually up, despite everything that had happened, driven by customers who wanted to support a business that had demonstrated integrity under pressure. But the number that meant the most to Keanu was at the bottom of the report. Zero. Zero inventory discrepancies in 3 months. Zero suspicious transactions. Zero betrayals. "The blockchain tracking system is working perfectly," Sarah explained. "Every motorcycle is accounted for from factory to customer. The new vetting procedures for employees have caught 3 applicants with connections to known criminal organizations. And the dealership alert network you helped establish has already prevented 2 attempted thefts at other businesses." Keanu nodded, but his attention had drifted to a group of people gathered near the back of the showroom. His second chance program. 12 individuals sat in a semicircle, listening to an instructor explain the basics of motorcycle mechanics. They ranged in age from early 20s to late 40s. Some had criminal records. Some had struggled with addiction. All of them had been given an opportunity to rebuild their lives. "Mind if I interrupt?" Keanu asked, approaching the group. 12 heads turned toward him with expressions mixing nervousness and hope. "I wanted to share something with you," he said, pulling up a chair to join their circle. 3 months ago, I discovered that people I trusted had been stealing from me. People I had promoted, defended, believed in. The betrayal nearly destroyed everything I had built. The room was completely silent. I could have responded to that betrayal by trusting no one, by assuming the worst about every person who walked through my doors, by building walls so high that no one could ever hurt me again. He looked at each face in turn, seeing the uncertainty, the fear of judgment, the desperate desire to prove themselves worthy. But that's not how I want to live, and that's not the kind of business I want to run. A young woman in the front row, barely 22, raised her hand hesitantly. Her name was Maria, and her file showed a past marked by poor choices and their consequences. Why take a chance on people like us? We've all made mistakes. We've all given people reasons not to trust us. Keanu smiled, remembering his own journey. The years before Hollywood took notice. The personal losses that had nearly destroyed him. The countless times he had been written off or underestimated. Because I believe that people can change. That past mistakes don't have to define future potential. That everyone deserves a chance to show who they really are, not who they were. He stood up, preparing to let them return to their training. The people who betrayed me chose to see this business as an opportunity to steal. You have a choice to. You can see it as just a job, a paycheck, something to get through until something better comes along. He paused at the doorway. Or you can see it as what it really is, a chance to be part of something that matters, to build something real, to prove to yourselves and to everyone else that you're more than your worst moments. The showroom was busy when Keanu completed his walk through. A young couple was admiring a Triumph Street Triple, the woman sitting on the bike while her partner took photos. An older man was asking detailed questions about a touring model, planning a cross-country trip he had dreamed about for decades. A group of friends was debating the merits of different bikes with the passionate intensity of true enthusiasts. This was what his dealership was meant for. Not theft and deception and betrayal. Connection. Joy. The pure excitement of finding the perfect machine to carry you toward adventure. His phone buzzed with a news alert. Federal prosecutors announce that Victor Marchetti has pleaded guilty to racketeering charges, accepting a 25-year sentence in exchange for testimony against other members of the Golden Road organization. Raymond Mitchell received 18 years. Michael Davidson and Derek Thompson each received 12 years. Samantha Chen received 7 years. Justice. Not perfect, perhaps. Not enough to undo the damage they had caused, but enough to prevent them from destroying anyone else's dreams for a very long time. Mr. Reeves. Sarah Harrison had approached while he was reading. Something I thought you'd want to see. She led him to the newly constructed wing of the dealership, where a sign read, Reeves Foundation Community Center. Inside, a class of teenagers was learning basic motorcycle maintenance, supervised by instructors who had graduated from the Second Chance program. These kids are from the youth center downtown, Sarah explained. Most of them have never had anyone believe they could amount to anything. Some of them were heading down the same path that led Ray Mitchell and the others to prison. Keanu watched a young man, maybe 16, successfully change his first motorcycle tire. The pride on the kid's face was unmistakable. That's Marcus, Sarah continued. 6 months ago, he was arrested for trying to steal a car. Now he's talking about becoming a certified mechanic after he graduates high school. One life changed, one future redirected, one person who might have become a Ray Mitchell instead choosing a different path. This is what it's all about, Keanu said quietly. Not the bikes or the revenue or the headlines. That evening, after the dealership closed, Keanu stood alone in the empty showroom. The motorcycles gleamed under the security lighting, their perfect surfaces reflecting the quiet satisfaction of a business rebuilt on stronger foundations. The betrayal still hurt. Probably always would. But it had also taught him something important. Trust is not weakness. Trust, offered carefully but genuinely, is the foundation of everything worth building. The criminals who had targeted him had seen trust as a vulnerability to exploit. They had counted on his faith in people to blind him to their schemes. And for a while, they had been right. But in the end, trust had also been his greatest strength. Trust in his own instincts, which had told him something was wrong. Trust in the process of investigation, which had revealed the truth. Trust in the system of justice, which had held the guilty accountable. And trust in the fundamental goodness of people, which had allowed him to rebuild with employees who deserved the chance to prove themselves. The neon sign outside flickered on, casting its blue glow against the darkening sky. Reeves Motorcycles. His name, his legacy, his responsibility. The road ahead would have more challenges, more tests, more opportunities to prove that integrity was more than just a word on a corporate values statement. But he was ready, because sometimes the worst betrayals teach us what truly deserves our trust, and sometimes the deepest wounds heal into the strongest scars. This is the story of Keanu Reeves and the criminals who thought they could exploit his success. They saw a celebrity, a businessman too rich and too famous to notice what happened in his own parking lot, a target too soft to fight back. They did not see the man who still remembered being hungry and unknown. They did not see the fighter who had survived personal tragedies that would have broken most people. They did not see the leader who believed that every person, regardless of their past, deserved a chance to prove their worth. Ray Mitchell thought he was running a sophisticated theft operation. He was really testing the resolve of someone who had built everything from nothing and refused to let it be taken away without a fight. Michael Davidson thought his betrayal would never be discovered. He learned that trust, once broken, leaves wounds that only justice can heal. Victor Marchetti thought his criminal empire was untouchable. He discovered that some targets fight back in ways no amount of planning can anticipate. The dealership still stands today, stronger than before, more transparent than ever, built on foundations that betrayal only strengthened. But the real legacy of those dark months is not found in security systems or profit reports or media coverage. It is found in the training center, where people with troubled pasts learn skills that will change their futures. It is found in the community programs that give at-risk youth alternatives to the paths that lead to prison. It is found in the partnerships with other businesses, sharing information and resources to protect an entire industry from predators. And it is found in the simple truth that one person, choosing to investigate rather than ignore, can expose darkness that others have accepted as inevitable. The world is full of people who see problems and look away, who notice something wrong and decide it is not their responsibility, who protect their comfort rather than their principles. Keanu Reeves could have stayed in his mansion, reviewing reports and trusting subordinates to handle problems. Instead, he put on a disguise and walked among his own employees as a stranger. He listened when others would have dismissed. He investigated when others would have delegated. He fought when others would have negotiated. And he rebuilt when others would have given up. Because some things are worth fighting for. Trust, integrity, the knowledge that what you have built stands on a foundation that cannot be corrupted. The next time you walk into a business and see values displayed on the wall, remember this story. Remember that values mean nothing without people willing to defend them. Remember that trust must be earned, protected, and sometimes rescued from those who would abuse it. And remember that sometimes the person watching from the corner, dressed in worn clothes with tired eyes, might not be who they appear to be. They might be someone who cares enough to find out the truth for themselves. They might be someone willing to risk everything for what they believe in. They might be someone who understands that the measure of a person is not what they build in times of ease, but what they protect in times of trial. They might be someone exactly like Keanu Reeves, or they might be someone exactly like you. Thank you for following this story! Let us know in the comments below. If this story has moved you and you'd like to stand with us in bringing more voices of truth and hope to light, please consider supporting our work. Even the smallest gift helps us continue creating and sharing these powerful stories. You can find the donate link in the description. And of course, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next chapter we're preparing for you.